4 years of waiting, and somehow this got very expensive very quickly. Because when Apple announced a refresh of the regular Studio Display, a lot of people had the same reaction. No panel upgrade, just Thunderbolt 5 and A19 chip and apparently some deeper bass. Good bass though. But then Apple quietly released the Studio Display XDR. And suddenly the display many people were actually waiting for existed, just not at the price anyone hoped for. And to be fair, I'm still not really sure how it happened, but it's here. And the question now isn't just what this display is like. The real question is, am I about to regret spending this much money on a 27-inch monitor? Because judging by the comments on my previous video, price has clearly become the main topic. But the box just arrived, and on the drive to the studio, I suddenly realized something. This monitor is more expensive than my car, which probably tells you something about my priorities. Normally, unboxing something like this feels a bit like a religious experience, but this time, not really, because the box is huge and I could barely fit it on the desk, and once you open it, it turns out to be this whole cardboard puzzle with layers and compartments everywhere. Man, you couldn't even return this if you wanted to. But strangely enough, it still feels very premium. Huh. It's not. Okay. What is with all these little fold-in stuff? Ah! The cloth, obviously. What is this, 80 centimeters? I'll check. Thunderbolt 5 cable, really thick cable. Cool. The first thing that stands out is the weight. Wow. And that tells you something about this monitor. It's not necessarily heavy, but it's dense, you know, super solid. You pick it up and you get the feeling that this thing is not going anywhere. And that matters a lot, to me at least. I mentioned Dell's flagship monitor in another video. On paper it looked great. In reality, I returned it the same day it arrived. Plastic, so much plastic. But here, completely different story. The stand feels like it's carved of a single block of aluminum. And the mechanism is ridiculously good, which immediately makes you wonder why so many monitors get this wrong. You start adjusting it just because it feels satisfying. Tilt it, lower it, raise it again. I can do this all day long. This is the kind of hardware where you understand why Apple engineers love aluminum. Build quality. Because the moment it's on your desk, it already feels like a completely different category of monitor. No wobble, no flex, no plastic creaks. Just one very minimalistic slab of aluminum and glass. But the real difference here is the panel. The part where Apple fixed the biggest criticism of the original Studio Display, and even the 2026 refresh, because this time Apple didn't only tweak the ports and update the internals, they actually changed the display technology. This is now a mini LED panel capable of roughly 2000 nits of peak HDR brightness and up to 120 Hz refresh rate with adaptive sync support, which means brighter highlights, deeper contrast, and much more precise dimming control. Apple is using about 2000 local dimming zones here. For context, the 32-inch Pro Display XDR had 576 dimming zones. So blooming is reduced, contrast is stronger, and dark scenes hold up much better. And I think that's what a lot of us were waiting for, because the original Studio Display always looked great, but the panel technology never really matched the price. Now at least the technology makes sense, but whether the price does remains to be seen. And that's why I want to warn you about something. Once you decide to go for this and get even a little bit used to it, there's no going back. So the panel is clearly the headline feature here, but the rest of the display is actually surprisingly simple. Ports, for example, are extremely minimal, because unlike a lot of high-end monitors that try to become a full desk hub, Apple still goes the opposite direction. You're not getting a zillion ports here. 2 USB-C ports and now 2 Thunderbolt 5, which means you can actually daisy chain 2 of these displays, although considering what one of these costs, that will probably remain nothing more than just a very expensive wet dream. And although fewer ports might sound limiting at first, another reason why people choose Apple displays is the one cable setup. Plug it in and all connected devices come online. Charging, accessories, storage, everything. And the port situation actually makes sense. There's less hardware that can age badly, which is also why I'm approaching this purchase slightly differently. My plan is to keep this display for at least 10 years. Spread the price over that time, and suddenly it sounds a lot more reasonable. Roughly $1 a day. What are we even talking about? But for my viewers in the US, this thing is actually a few $100 more expensive here in the Netherlands. So technically, you're getting a pretty good deal. Hey, maybe that'll help you go for that Nano-Texture option. You're welcome. Because Apple has been refining its anti-reflection glass for quite a while now. The original version worked well, but cleaning it was apparently a bit of a nightmare. Newer versions already seem much easier to live with. My first impression here in the studio with all these lights is that it actually works pretty well, and hopefully even better in normal everyday use. One thing I also noticed, the VESA mount costs exactly the same as the tilt and height adjustable stand, which is a bit strange because with the regular Studio Display, the VESA version was actually cheaper. But paying the same amount for less hardware, I just couldn't do it. Even though I use a monitor arm right now, I wanted VESA. I don't know, I guess that's just the Dutch side of my brain. Another thing, the power cable still fixed. They didn't listen to me, they didn't change it. I honestly don't know why. And a limitation I already knew going in, my MacBook Pro with the M1 Max tops out at 60 Hz with this display. So I can't really judge yet how much better 120 Hz actually is, but when I upgrade soon, that's definitely something I'll test. Now, of course, there's another conversation happening. The 32-inch question, because a lot of people were hoping Apple would release a 32-inch 6K display, and honestly, so was I. But if this is what Apple asked for 27 inches, 32 inches could get pretty uncomfortable. Some people think this 27-inch XDR basically killed the 32-inch idea. Others think Apple is simply saving that announcement for the next Mac Studio release. And right now, we just don't know. But what we do know is that this display is already pushing into territory where people start asking a very simple question. Is it worth it? Because if it's twice the price, is it actually twice as good or just a bit better? What I can already say, I definitely don't regret buying it, but I do kind of feel Apple is pushing the product ladder a little too aggressively here. Do you think so too? Or do you think the price is actually justifiable? Let me know in the comments. I'm really curious where you land on this. And of course, we'll find out a lot more once I've actually used it for a while.